Hello and welcome to Cruising and Musing. We're down by Fort Myers Beach. Rode down this way to listen to a bit of music at one of the resorts, and a friend was playing out, show some support for his show. And we are going to talk about the 2020-2021 school year, better known as the Year of Hell. And this is probably going to be part one of a multi-part shot because my phone will only record videos that are about 25 minutes long. So, our school year closed in 2019 normally. We're a virtual program. So while everyone else is panicked doing remote learning for the first time, we are life as usual. And we're wrapping it up. And we, go out of the way to try to make the graduation special, even though the in-person ceremonies is canceled. But life is good at the close of, 2019-2020 school year. Or if not good, at least normal, even though we're shut down, in the state. We're getting paid. And the kids, have not had an interruption in our program. Things are not so good outside of our program, but they're okay in our program. And we all go. And for the first year, in a long number of years, I decided to take the summer off. And it's somewhere over the summer things begin to go wrong. And this is all things I found out later, but at some point during the summer, our school district realizes that they're going to have to offer distant learning or virtual options during, the coming school year. That things are not going to go back to normal for 2020-2021. Well, they come up with their own program called Home Connect, which is different from ours. In our program, it's sort of an independent study. The students read a lot, and there's support from the teachers there. And think of it like an independent study with, on-call teachers acting as tutors to help you and help hold you accountable for what you got to do. We keep you on pace, we keep you working forward, we help you as you get stuck. But it's more like a reverse classroom. You're doing a lot of the first acquisition of knowledge on your own, and we're working through the homework with you, more or less. The program they offered is not like that. It is the teacher's going to have to perform in front of a camera like a trained circus monkey, going through all the lessons that they would normally try to do in person, but they're doing that with kids in person, but also with you coming in through Zoom. And, my heart goes out to the teachers that had to work through those classes and work like that. You were being forced to work 2 jobs and getting paid for one. Now, it turns out later on that year, I was also working 2 jobs and getting paid for one. But I didn't, in hindsight, I still think I may have had it a bit easier as an individual than some of those teachers. So they begin to market their 4 school options. You can either go to school normally and go to the hybrid courses that the school's doing and go in person. And some of your courses will be in person, others will be hybrid, where you tune into a virtual course, what have you. The entire way of doing it gets complicated and messed up. But it's the replacement for your normal school day in-person learning. Or you can go to homeschool and be homeschooled. Or you can go to Home Connect, which again is the teachers on Zoom all day long trying to get you to do your work and spoon feed you. Or you can come down to our program, which is as I've described it. Now, the district does a very, very poor job of explaining what the difference is between our program and this Home Connect program. And what's more is they refer to them both as remote learning options. The remote learning that happened at the end of 2019 was, I don't think anyone truly understood that it was going to be as going into the next year and the year after. The kids were allowed to not do anything, not turn in any work, and their grades couldn't fall lower than what they had been when they came, back and went into the lockdowns and started the distant learning. So their grades could only go up and they couldn't go down. So a lot of the kids didn't even bother signing into the Zoom classes, or they would sign into the Zoom and walk away so they would get their attendance marked, and they wouldn't turn anything in because they knew they couldn't be held against them. And that's the expectation they had going to these remote learning things was, I'll just sign it, I'll do one thing, get an A on it, not log into the Zoom classes, not do my work, and I'll be fine, no consequences at the end. That's the expectation that was set. That's bad enough for the Home Connect way of doing things. It's even worse for us where there's so much independent study, and every single standard is covered by an assignment they have to do. Normal teachers, do 2 assignments a week in their grade book, and 36, so that's 36 in a 18-week course. Some of our courses, they're doing 50, 60 assignments in a semester. It's much more rigorous because you have to show proof that every single standard in the Florida Sunshine Standards has been covered. It's, the trade-off of doing school from home is what I always said is, you're showing us proof that you're learning by not having to put up with education. So because of this lack of messaging, everyone just starts signing up like those two programs are interchangeable and they don't understand the difference between the two. And they start calling the schools because they have questions. Now, we were a program of 400. And we had 400 full-time students, and then we had 1,200 part-time enrollments that we would process through the other schools, helping them out with virtual learning labs throughout the school year. So it was like the equivalent of having maybe a 600-student school that was being operated by 30 or so teachers, 1 administrator, 1 assistant principal, 2 guidance counselors, and 1 school secretary. And we had an information specialist by that point. And that's all the personnel we have. So the phone starts to ring off the hook. Eventually, we were going to end up, at one point we had 16,500 people on our rolls signed up, wanted to come to our program. 16,500 students. And we were like the equivalent of a 600-person school with, the limited staff I just described. I get called in by my boss, asked in the middle of July, asked to, voluntarily come in and help answer phones, because the phones are ringing off the hook so much he can't get away from his desk to go try and beg help, or, and he can't call out. So I get a call from his personal phone to my personal phone asking for help, and he calls all the teachers asking us to come in and help because of this problem. So a bunch of us show up to help out because, he's always been, good by us in the past, and he doesn't lightly ask us to do anything for free after, like a couple of years where we cracked down on that and was like, no, anything extra we need paid for. Even if it's not going to be paid enough for it, we want to see some sort of compensation. So he calls us in, and we're working for free trying to catch up the phones. And it turns out that the first round of the district helping him, when he shows up frantic saying, we literally can't call out, we're getting thousands of calls in, was to take our phone system and take the cap off the messages that could be left. So you've got a dozen teachers in there coming back from vacation early, voluntarily, to return these calls, and we're trying to return like 12,000 messages from people, and we're all working through it, and it's like, we're doing what we can to try to get back to people who are asking all these questions about our program. And the only help that we get sent is, and keep in mind, our district building has hundreds of people working in it, and at any given point you can catch maybe a dozen of them catching their steps up out in the hallway doing nothing. We get sent 1 secretary from 1 other division who's working with us part-time to help us catch up on these phones. And that's all the help he had, and hence why he has to call in all the teachers. So we're doing this. So the district fails us on the messaging, they fail us on the support. We come in to try to help. And fortunately, the district doesn't have their act together either, so they moved the start of school back for 2 weeks. Our boss at this point finally gets somebody from the district to come down and see what's going on, and he shows them the numbers of how, we used to have the equivalent of 600 kids and we only have so many staff members. And things finally start to move. We start to get more people transferred down to our office. They bring all of our staff members back. All of our teachers come back when we're supposed to. So we start we end up with like a month of preschool week to work to try to prepare for what's coming. And what's coming is that we're trying to prepare and overhaul our systems and our procedures for bringing on 12,000 to 16,000 students and bringing on anywhere up to 300 teachers, or I forget what the end number was, but I do think it ended up being like 250 to 300 teachers, bringing them on who had never taught virtual school before to service all of those students. Myself, one of our senior guidance counselor, and one other teacher who very technical know-how like myself. We end up sitting in an office because there's no space for us to spread out. So there's 3 of us in one little 8x8 office with all of our laptops out, and we're scheduling kids in classes by the thousands, and we're just trying to get core classes. So we're not doing full schedules. You need electives, you're shit out of luck. You're lucky if you're getting your math, your English, your social studies, and a science. Because because we're struggling to even get that done. And we're scheduling them by the thousands as we're getting the waves of kids getting re-registered to us. We start doing, instead of our normal orientations, it's, come in to Zoom, to this orientation, so you at least know where to send your paperwork to. By the end of it all, I think we ended up with like 13,000 students out of the 16,000 that were intended to come to us. Some of them, listened to the orientations and said, no, this isn't what we wanted, and backed out. And we get that done. Now, our principal came up, and this is what he pitched to all of us, which is what got us to agree to come back to work early and really help set everything up, was that each of the veteran teachers would have a pod of these inexperienced teachers answered to them, and our job was to mentor the pod of teachers until they had their feet underneath them, and then we would go in and we would act as a TA to our pod of teachers, helping them help the students that were struggling the most, help them with grading, help them with calls, and help them with any discipline issues, so on and so forth. So we would start off as mentor teachers, then become their assistants, and act as kind of like maybe grade level deans might be a good example for this. And we were all busting our ass on this idea of, if we really, really, go all hands on deck, working 10, 12-hour days before school starts to make this happen and get all these new teachers trained and at least set up to where they can even begin to work with their students, that, there'll be that moment of breath of, we won't be the ones directly in the trenches, dealing with the kids directly until, everyone's trained. It was still signing up for a full-time job, but it was what would typically be a less stressful full-time job. I did end up working with just teachers, but I had like 200 teachers asking me questions for the first couple weeks there. And that was definitely as stressful as having 200 students, if not more so, as I'm trying to slowly, show people who don't know how to use computers how to get their slideshows off of PowerPoint into Google Slides so to load up into Zoom and be compatible with this, and all the technical aspects of this. If you've ever taught your grandparents how to use a printer, you understand the pain I was going through with. I suddenly had 200 grandmas that needed tech support. We'll put it that way. In fact, I ate really, really good there for about 2 months because all the grandmas and older fellas I helped, they would drop food off at my house for me. I was getting pies and casseroles, and oh man, the gifts of gratitude were wonderful, but they packed on some pounds. So that was an upshot of I was very well fed going through that school year and acquired a large number of accessory grandparents. But back to the dredge of this, of what's going on. On the 28th of August, 2 days before we're supposed to start school, I'm down in the district building and I am teaching our new mid-level administrators, which was a position called teacher lead or lead teachers that was in there to help the administrators deal with all of us teachers. And the idea was that you would have one teacher for high school, one lead teacher for middle, one lead teacher for elementary, and they would act in assistance to the assistant principals who were in turn helping the principals. As we got a wave of new personnel down there that all needed to be trained, so they needed experienced people in those teacher lead positions to assist that knew how to do everything. And I had administrator access to our programs before, so I'm teaching them how to schedule kids and how to use the administrator access and how to do this and how to do that with the computers. When all of a sudden we get locked out of all of our spreadsheets that we have all the teachers on and we're assigning everyone everything, we are doing the master schedule for the school 2 days before school is supposed to start for the kids. We get locked out of the master schedule we're working on, and all of a sudden all the directors and coordinators for the district are logged in there, and we can see them moving things around, and we can see the names of all these veteran teachers that have been working so hard getting moved down and assigned. Now our contract normally has us working with 160 students, 250 to 300 students each, being assigned to classes they'd never taught before, and it's 2 days before school, and now we need to learn entirely new curriculum and get the kids started in it at the same time. So just think of that, like we're already exhausted from working through this month. I was working Saturdays trying to help train these new teachers because lots of times we would get 5 to 10 teachers assigned to us Friday during the day, and by the time they figured out how to get in contact with us, it would be Saturday, 6 o'clock on Friday night, 8 o'clock on Friday night, and we'd have to have them sign in on Saturday for us to start teaching them how to use the websites and everything that they need to be able to use to teach the kids, because that's where the curriculum was. And so we're 2 days away from opening on the school and having all the students there, and the district completely pulls the rug out from underneath us. We end up in an 8 o'clock at night staff meeting. I saw a grown man cry. Our principal felt so sorry, felt like he had failed us, when it's the district that betrayed us. And in the process, they assigned a second principal to the school that sat there and didn't say a damn thing. And I'm in this meeting like I am lit up. I watched us lose control, and I watched the women I was working with start to cry, and I got pissed. So by the time we're at this 8 o'clock meeting, I'm saying, I got a really good idea. Let's show up to the director's office tomorrow in force, all 300 of us with pitchforks and torches. I am ready to burn the place down and go on the warpath because, I have been involved in a way I've never been involved in before, and to have the carpet yanked out from underneath me like that was just more than I was willing to bear. And to this day, I am still more involved with the school than I ever was before, as far as teacher leadership goes and whatnot, because I'm still pissed and still trying to get us some sort of comeuppance in return for what the district did to all of us. But we'll move past that. So we were in this meeting. Our boss, has a breakdown because he feels like he's failed us so badly, and we all learn what our fate's going to be. We're going to have to try to help all these new teachers and balance double our normal student load just about ourselves. And we all already know that if we're going to have all new students, that 160 we had before, the idea was that most of those would be students who already knew the program from having been in the program the year before, because we had like a steady, like we would graduate 20% of our kids, add 20% in new, and so maybe 1 out of 5 kids was higher maintenance for being new, but at least half the kids usually knew what they were doing. And all of us were looking at having 250 new students, and new students who didn't even know what they signed up for on top of that. And this is what we're going through. And to make it worse, the district didn't even stop at that point. They made it so that students that had transferred into us couldn't transfer back out. So we had students who came to us and couldn't go back to brick and mortar or go to the Home Connect option when they realized they were in the wrong place. They locked our enrollment. They started to come down past our administrator constantly. They messed up the way that we did attendance and made us do attendance in a way that it took us hours a week to take attendance. Then they reached down and they had us do things like if the student was more than 2 weeks overdue for an assignment, we had to put in zeros. But before we could put in the zeros, we had to call the family and tell them we were putting in the zeros. And they issued this when myself and most of the other teachers had just gotten done calling these 250 families, because we had to do those calls every 30 days. That's part of our program, and none of the requirements in our program were relaxed, despite having these crazy numbers and the unique circumstances. So they kept finding ways to add, hours and hours of work to our already overloaded plates, and there has never been, to date, any sort of compensation or any apology for it. In fact, one of the women who was behind us having the huge course loads who made all of those decisions, I don't know what she whistle-blowed on, but she got $500,000 and is now, off living happily ever after. And that just pisses me off all the more, because that woman in particular made all of our lives a living hell for that year. And it's just kind of continued since, and it's spilled over into this year a little bit more. But things that you normally do, like when you lose your planning period and have to teach a 8th class, if you've got a schedule of 8 or a schedule of 7, you lose your planning period and teach a 7th. Normally that's associated with a higher rate of pay. We assuredly were teaching, say, 10 out of 8 or 11 out of 8 or 12 out of 8, and we weren't getting that 8 out of 8 pay bump. We've never gotten any of that money. Even this year, when they're handing out, and we're still overloaded with students, and they're handing out money left and right in the brick and mortar schools for extra classroom coverage duties and whatnot, where you might have 2 or 3 kids. I think that's like the baseline, is if you have 3 children in your classroom for more than an hour in a day, you get some sort of payment in compensation. No one in my program has seen a dime of that last year or this year. Well, that money's been getting handed out to everyone else. We're getting really, screwed raw by the district on this. And while things have gotten better, it hasn't gotten better on account of the district. So that was hell year. Now, part B of this is going to be this current year, the situation on how things have played out. It's gotten better, but it's still not perfect. Stand by, and there'll be another 15-minute video for part B.